Okay, seeing none. Agenda item number 4, we have some special speakers today regarding the jail feasibility study. I don't know, Sheriff McCall wanted to introduce the topic and then invite the speakers up.
Sure. Good evening. I know I've been coming to you guys and talking to you a while about the condition of the jail. It's my constitutional duty to maintain the jail. And it's one it's challenging every day by myself and the men and women that work for us. Michigan Department of Correction is tasked with doing annual jail inspections. We've been doing a self-inspection for the last 5 years. And when the gentleman from the MDOC came in this year, I wasn't surprised at their findings. We had numerous violations, things of that nature. And I asked them if they would come and explain their report to you today to tell you the dire condition that the jail is in. And tonight, Mr. Larry Abrams with the Michigan Department of Corrections and Ron, is it Ratchet, did I pronounce it right? Ron is with Michigan Department of Corrections. He'll also be speaking with you tonight. So if I could have you gentlemen come on up and you stand or sit, whatever you prefer.
That's fine. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for having us.
So, to start off with, again, my name is Larry Abraham. I worked a little bit of my background, just so you know, I have a pretty good understanding of jails. Worked for Livingston County Sheriff's Department for about 20 years in the jail and on the road, and I've been working with the Department of Corrections the past 3 years doing jail inspections. So, having worked in a jail for a long time, I kind of know day-to-day stuff and what problems and concerns and areas that can really trouble the sheriff in particular and their staff. So we recently came in and did what we call a physical plan evaluation. It's where we kind of go through the whole facility, look at plumbing, electrical, security issues, HVAC, everything, and kind of just give you a breakdown of the condition and any areas of concern that we have. The sheriff has that report. I'm going to highlight a few of the big concerns, and I won't bore you with all of the details. I also wanted to add that I kind of have a unique stake in this. Not only do I do the jail inspections, but I also live in this county, and I have lived here for almost 20 years. So I kind of have a little bit of a personal interest in the jail here. So again, like I said, we looked at the plumbing. Overall, the plumbing's in rough shape. Some of the pipes are corroded to the point where a cross section, we had a piece cut out, and I don't even know that if anything could pass through it. And you guys, you may know a lot of these things already, or already know of a lot of these concerns. A lot of the cells are unusable right now due to the plumbing. They're not able to house inmates there, which causes overcrowding in other areas. Makes it difficult for the staff to separate inmates by classification, and that's a very vital part of a facility. You have to be able to separate out your inmates for liability concerns and for their safety needs as well. And the jail is unable to do that when all the cells are operational. And it's one of the areas that we did cite was classification, that they're not able to house them properly. And when a cell goes down, it just makes it that much more difficult for the staff and for the sheriff. So that was definitely one of our big concerns. Electrical, some issues with the electrical. You do have some new roof-mounted air conditioning units. Some are new, some are old. Even with having the new ones, the jail is very humid. I've been there multiple times in the last year, at different times of the year, and I'm not sure if they're having a difficulty balancing it out, but and not that the jail is supposed to be some 5-star hotel, I get that, but the humidity is causing mold issues. And we've seen in a lot of the plumbing chases and some of the cell areas just a lot of mold, which could cause a lot of other health concerns. So Again, I don't know if maintenance staff is having difficulty getting it to balance out, or if there's just not proper airflow. It is a common problem with some of the older jails, however. Roofing, we were up on the roof, there's several leaks. We took some photos. There's standing water on the roof. Again, water coming in. We could see the water coming in into a cell area where there was a bunk. I mean, the water's literally dripping onto the bunk. Again, that doesn't help with the mold issues that you're already dealing with and the humidity. Generator was fairly new. We didn't have any troubles with the generator. Perimeter fencing, only a portion of the jail is covered with or secured by fencing. The current fencing is inadequate. It's not high enough. It's kind of flimsy. I'm 44 with a torn Achilles and I can make it over that fence, so it's definitely an issue. Walkways, we looked at the walkways. Some of the concrete's in poor shape. It's uneven. Camera systems, a big area of concern for us. Other than your holding area, there's no cameras in the cells. That is a huge liability. It's a liability when it comes to suicide, assault, anything that an inmate is going to try to say that happened. It's their word against yours because you don't have cameras. I would say almost all the jails in the state have some type of cameras in their cells. So that's a big area of concern. Cameras can be costly to try to add throughout a whole facility. So some of these things, I don't know, if you're going to build a new jail, if you're not, you're going to have to do some of these things. If you're going to build a new jail, you might want to think about what money you're going to put into the current one. The cell conditions they're bad. Again, I'm not an inmate advocate by any means. Many years ago, I was probably the guy who said give them bread and water, and that's good enough. But so when I say the cells are bad, they're bad. Kind of covered the ventilation. It's very poor. There's no air movement. The jail's not efficient when it comes to energy. The reason I bring that up, there's a jail on the west side of the state. They built a new facility. It's actually larger than their old facility, but they were saving $12,000 a month in heating and cooling because of the efficiency. I know they had boarded up some windows over here to help keep the cold air and the warm air, I guess, from coming in. And so, it's clear that it's not efficient when it comes to energy. So I bring that up again because there are some big cost savings that you could realize with a new facility as far as energy. And in the report, I kind of highlighted, your jail, a lot of jails have had additions and major renovations. When I went through the whole list, you're about the 9th oldest jail in the state of Michigan. And I would say that as far as worst shape, definitely in the top 10, possibly top 5. And again, I've been to every jail in the state at least 3 times. So, I'm not here telling you, you need a new jail when you don't, because you really do for a lot of reasons. Another big concern we have is the layout of the facility for security purposes. It's just not, they didn't design jails many years ago the way that we do now. It's not laid out properly for staff or for inmates for safety or security. And that's just an area of concern. Someone's going to get hurt, something's going to happen, and it's going to cost the county money as far as a lawsuit. I've spoken to, and I think the sheriff has also, Tom Cremani from MMRMA, who's your insurance provider, and he and I actually used to work together at Livingston County many years ago. He's been through the facility, and we've kind of gone over some of these things over the last year. He's on the same page. He agrees that overall the physical plant is just to the point where you need to do something drastic, which would most likely be a new facility. You can continue to throw money into the facility, but I hate to see that. It's almost kind of a waste because the building's only going to last so long, and to me, it's already past the point of really you shouldn't be using it. Another issue we noticed were the locks. Some of the locks are so old that there's literally there's not any current locksmith in the state of Michigan that can work on them. And so you're gonna have to bring in locksmiths from another state. I think the sheriff, you had,
Wisconsin was the closest one we could
Mhm.
find to maintain our current locks. In fact, one of our locks that was broke down, rather than get somebody from Wisconsin to fix it, we had to buy a new one, and that was $500 just for one lock.
so 500 here, 1,000 here, 1,500 here. These things add up over time. You guys understand that. You know that. I guess my main concern, and we're here to kind of express it's a liability, and it's not, is something going to happen? It's just a matter of when. We get calls all the time from attorneys. They're filling out the FOIA forms. They're wanting our reports, our inspections. An inmate twists an ankle. There's some attorney getting involved. A county nearby recently paid $295,000 over mail. They weren't getting the mail the right way or the right type of mail. Now, I mean, 300 grand, to me, that's a lot of money. And that's over mail. If you have an inmate that, comes down with some kind of respiratory problem and their attorney cites mold or ventilation, or an inmate gets assaulted and there's no cameras and your staffing is not appropriate to keep them safe. I mean, you have a duty to protect the inmates. If that's not being done, there's a list of things I can go over that are going to increase your liability, and we don't want to see that. I hate to see counties pay money out to attorneys over frivolous things, but it happens every day. So, other than that, I think, Ron, if you have anything you want to add.
I guess I would just add, we see every jail where the state's regulation agents, there's two of us, we both work for the Department of Corrections. A little bit about my background, I was a corrections officer for 17 years. I also look at some of the fire stuff. We're both national fire inspectors. I retired out of the fire service after 24 years. So there's things that we see that are coming or that you guys currently have problems with. Some of the issues I see, you have means of egress, means clear path of exit in your jail that are a problem or will continue to be a problem. What we do as regulation agents, we inspect every single jail. We audit your policies or the policies of every single county, and we go through every single jail. And so hopefully, a unique perspective is what we can offer. There are things that the jails are held to, and they're called the administrative rules. Those are set out by statute, that certain things that they have to meet, certain staffing, classification, and the Shiawassee County Jail is not in compliance based on those things. Well, some of that can be fixed if you move a little bit here or you do something. That's not the case with the Shiawassee County Jail. So one positive is one of the two regulation agents for the state actually lives in this county, and he understands as well as I that the jail has met its time capacity. Things are failing on probably a daily basis, and I guess we've both seen these how lawsuits go. You're either going to pay it at the front or the back. And I would rather see a county pay at the front, get it out of the way, and get into a facility that's not going to generate lawsuits or the potential for lawsuit, rather than, again, like Larry said, Agent Abraham said, pay it to an inmate or an attorney. So,
And there's 36 administrative rules that we go through when we do an inspection, and one of those rules is safety and maintenance of equipment, and that would be basically your physical plant. Just to kind of generalize, I don't think this past year any of the jails have actually failed that area. They might have fallen down on some of the policies or use of force issues. Classification's a big one, but I don't know that, and I'm pretty sure not one jail has failed, maybe one. But Shiawassee County, I have noted it on here that safety and maintenance of equipment, that there's a lot of issues and a lot of concerns on our behalf. And so that just kind of, I just wanted to highlight that as one of the areas of concern, that there's only so much you can do with, some of the things that as old as they are.
If we could stop there for a minute, and maybe see if there's any initial questions. I'm guessing you guys are getting close to being wrapped up.
Yeah, I am.
Is that, I'm sure there might be some questions, but commissioners?
Sure.
So in your opinion, is that building over there suitable to continue housing inmates? In your professional opinion, continuing on with that building right now?
No.
And what do you foresee, I mean, what's the Band-Aid gonna look like if we continue? When is the Department of Corrections gonna finally say, you can't operate this building?
That would be kind of above my,
Okay.
but we try to work with counties. That's why we're here today. We want to work with you and help you and give you an honest. I'm not here selling you anything. I understand it costs money. I live in this county, so I know what's how it works. I'm not here to make a buck or sell you something that you don't need. And if I thought there were a way to salvage that, maybe some new paint, some new plumbing, but I've seen other jails try to do that, and I mean I don't even know that you can get parts for some of the plumbing in there, and I know most of it's buried in concrete. The new facilities, you don't build them that way. They have access to all the plumbing. So I know that if we're sitting here 5 years from now having the same conversation and you were to keep track of all the money, it would be astronomical.
Mr. Chair, and you kind of partially answered this. Much like other departments, I mean, you try to work with the counties. And I know it's kind of like Department of Ag's not in the business of shutting down farms.
Right.
Are you in the business of shutting down jails? Have you shut down jails?
Not in the 3 years I've been here, no.
But we're at that point where you would say it's not worth it.
I would say you'd be throwing money into a bad situation. It would almost be a waste.
So okay, and then also you talked a little bit about lawsuits. Could you delve a little more into that, other potential ways we could be hit with lawsuits, and the cost of
Sure.
that versus the cost of
Well,
the facility?
Again, the cameras are a huge thing because they usually can help you if you use them right to prove that an inmate's lying. You have an upstairs in your facility that with a rec area, and they also use it for classrooms. I don't know if you've all been in the jail or which ones have or haven't, but you know what I'm talking about, that second floor. There's a lot of times, in fact, one time when I was here, there were inmates up there and there was no officers because you didn't have the staffing. One of the administrative rules is that you have at least one officer on each floor where there's inmates.
Even if they're like the trustees that do laundry?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And so, yes, laundry's up there, medical's up there. You have a duty to protect the staff, not just the inmates. And so you have a nurse up there on the second floor, and I would bet a lot of money that there's times there's inmates up there and there's no officer. Just from working in a jail, I was a sergeant. I remember yelling at some of my guys, "What are you doing? You can't leave the nurse by themselves. You can't do that." Being on another floor and you're spread thin because of the facility layout. I mean, it's not a 1,200 bed jail, but it's spread out, square footage wise.
A comment and a question. I doubt that you even will be willing to answer this question, but if you can, just an idea, I'm not going to hold you to anything, but to replace a jail of that size, same number of cells, and everything you've suggested that needs to be done. I know you've been around it long enough. You're not contractors, I get that. About how much are we looking at?
That's not my expertise.
I actually brought
I
that
know you would.
I brought
Sorry.
that expert with me tonight.
Okay.
This gentleman right here.
He can answer that
is
for you.
To answer those types of questions.
Sorry about
And the other
that.
thing, just the other comment would
Sure.
be, you brought up mold. Mold is a medical issue. Medical issues go on for years and years and years. To answer, I would say to your question, and certainly would come from an attorney better, but that could be millions.
Yeah, well, that was my question on the mold. So like,
Yeah.
so this could be employees could be affected by
Absolutely.
this. We could see a lawsuit, not just from inmates, we could see potential lawsuits from.
Commissioner McMaster, we actually opened every single chase, plumbing chase, and part of the physical plant evaluation we did, we documented that you have standing mold, you have water in your chases that's outside of pipes. You also have some asbestos present that has not been abated. That, you know, there are things that are going on. Some of the showers actually vent into those plumbing chases, which go to nowhere, and that's why you have some of the issues you do.
I was curious, you don't have to answer now, but I was told that whoever works on the plumbing, they will remove the insulation, which is asbestos, and they follow the protocol that you're supposed to, but I had spoken to my supervisor about it, and he's pretty much an expert in this area, and he said there's a lot of training that goes into
Asbestos abatement.
the proper asbestos abatement, and you've got to tent it off, you got to have the right gear, airflow, and so I don't know that your maintenance staff are doing that, but if they're not, I mean, not only can the inmates sue, but yeah, staff can sue as well. You know, when I worked at Livingston, we had one inmate assault another, and we paid $40,000. This is 15 years ago, just because they weren't classified the same. You had a medium guy beat up a minimum guy, 40 grand. Had they both been minimum or medium, we'd have paid $0. Now you guys have inmates in there that are classified different levels but housed together.
Other
So
questions?
I have one, just real quick, for the sheriff, just for the record, how old is the current jail?
1962.
1962?
I do have one or two questions. First, and this may segue into our next presentation. I had the opportunity to visit Calhoun County's new facility down there, and that's a joint public safety, I think, between the state of Michigan, Calhoun County Sheriff, public safety, and other things housed there. I think they had a state legislator that helped them with the capital outlay appropriation because the state police were housed there. And maybe, again, this is sort of a conversation for our next agenda item, but is there an opportunity, or maybe should we be thinking about, rather than just a new jail, a little bit broader about how we might be able to approach this problem?
I always recommend if you can tie the courts in, if you need new courtrooms or area for the courts, because judges tend to kind of get what they want a lot of times. They have some pull, so if you can somehow pull in the courts into it, that usually helps also.
I think, Mr. Chair, the Calhoun, I think, is a rare instance because the former Speaker of the House was from Calhoun. His father was a retired state trooper, and his brother is a state trooper. So, I think that was a special project.
Yeah.
I have not seen that in other places.
Yeah, I have not
Right.
either.
Just-
Very special project.
It was, I mean,
It looked very special.
they did a great job, Commissioner.
Yeah, they made it work.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just one request, I didn't see that their report in the packet. Can you follow up?
We sure can.
Give us a copy.
Each got it.
You know that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if it meets the board's approval, these gentlemen, we're just going to take this opportunity to leave.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I brought another guest with us tonight. Thanks, guys, appreciate it. Joe is with BICE Engineers and Architects. I knew the problem that was facing the county, and so I wanted to seek out a true professional in this field. And Joe truly is an expert. He's designed a lot of jails in Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and so I contacted his company about doing this jail feasibility study, which is going to look into the future of what the county's needs are for the next 20 years. So I'll go ahead and have him explain to you a little bit about what that feasibility study would do for us.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is it okay if I stand up and talk? My wife says I sound more important when I stand up and talk rather than sit down. So, I'm Joe Marak. My company is actually Securitecture, is the name of my firm. I'm here representing BICE and Associates. Tonight, Jim Escamilla, the president of BICE, is on vacation today, so I'm up here covering for him and I both. Securitecture and BICE and Associates have been working together for about since 2006, and we came together solely for the purposes of doing justice projects in the state of Michigan. I am a registered architect. I'm registered in 12 states. I've spent my 37-year career doing nothing but justice and public safety projects. I have designed over between 90 and 100 county jails, probably done about 200 of these feasibility studies. So I've had a little bit of practice at it. And so what I want to do is I want to kind of cover what the purpose and what we're going to do, what we're going to achieve doing a feasibility study. But first of all, the last thing we are going to do is give you a feasibility study where you put it on the shelf, it collects dust for the next 10 years, and you don't ever do anything with it. We're not going to do that. We're going to give you a feasibility study that has practical answers to solve your problems. And so in a feasibility study, our job is to get everybody singing off the same sheet of music, right? Because you're thinking, would everybody, you say the word, we need a new jail. Every person here has a different idea in their head. Well, what's that mean? What's that cost? How are we going to run it? You have no idea because it's all, in your head. You don't know. With the feasibility study, we're going to answer, how big is the bread box? How much is it going to cost to build? Where is it going to go? And most importantly, how much is it going to cost to staff it and maintain it? Because staffing a jail is the true cost of the jail. Building it, it doesn't sound right, but building it's the easy part. Operating it forever is the hard part. Those costs never go down, they always go up. People change, you got to train people, they go on vacation, things like that. You need to know what those costs are when you do a study like this. So what we're proposing is a typical feasibility study, what we do. We have basically 4 or 5 steps. The first step is we get ourselves organized. We recommend that the county develop a committee to work with. And then that committee will then, in turn, communicate with the full board or various groups. We'll work with the committee, we'll get ourselves organized, we'll get ourselves scheduled. We believe that this will take about, I think we have in the proposal, 120 days. So around 4 months it should take us. That's a function, though, I will admit, on the data collection. The very first thing we'll do after we get organized is collect data. So we're going to go to the sheriff and say, we want 10 years of your jail records. Give me your inspection reports. Give me, annual, or monthly bookends. Your average length of stay. How many meals have been served? Give me your maintenance reports. We're going to collect all this data. We're going to go interview the judges. And because the thing you have to realize is a jail does not exist by itself. It's not an island. It is part of a system, part of the justice system in Shiawassee County. So the judges are part of that. Who's in your jail and how long they're in your jail is not the sheriff's function, it's the judge's function. So you have to study the entire system to get a picture of, because what we have to do is we have to answer, well, what's our need? We don't really care what your need is today. We care about what your need's going to be in 20 years. So we do these interviews. We collect data over 10 years and we project out 20 years. We project out demographics, the growth of the county, population and such. And while collecting population and population growth or shrinkage or whatever you might have, are you a rapidly growing county, a slow growing county? We need to figure that out. But population isn't the thing that's driving the population of the jail. Your jail population grows much faster than the county general population. Why is that? It's because you have legislative change. Every time the legislature meets, you got new rules. And you need new people to comply with those new rules. And you need more money to comply with those rules. So it's all of those things. We'll look at what are the trends. Not just what are you doing now, what do you need to be doing that you're not doing, what are those trends? One of those trends, for instance, one of them is females in jail. I don't know what it is right now, but in 1981, when I started designing jails, the national average was 1.5% of all jail inmates were females. Today, it's probably around 30%. I've seen some as high as 40%. So what's caused that? Well, there's a lot of things that's caused it. So it's societal issues. It has nothing to do with your jail population. The other thing is the mentally ill. You don't have the ability to deal with the mentally ill in your jail. So in a new jail, you would design a process that maybe we can divert these people into other kinds of care. They're mentally ill, yeah, they created a crime, but the crime isn't really the problem. The crime is the symptom. Maybe if we have partnerships with hospitals or other providers that we can get to, perform better services for these people. Because it's the fact is, the mentally ill stay in your jail longer than people that aren't mentally ill because they don't have the capacity, they don't have the resources to get out like other people do. They don't have family, they don't have friends that are there to help. So anyway, we look at these demographics. We collect data. And like I said, that's the longest, it's always the longest part is to collect all the data so we can start doing our projections. Then we'll go in and we'll look at your jail. And like the gentleman from the Department of Corrections talked about, they talked about the plumbing and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is your jail is past its useful life. I tell clients of mine, jails age in dog years. So every year of a jail, your jail ages 7 years. Well, it's because it never shuts down. The people are there don't want to be there, so they don't take care of it. You have plumbing issues all the time. Plumbing, a 10-year-old jail often has plumbing systems that are shot. But it's not it. It's just the fact that the way you're at a critical mass with your jail. In that it was built in 1962 or 3, it was been added on to a couple of times, and each of those additions was basically a Band-Aid on the problem. And it's gotten to the point where you need to start over again in order to be efficient. Because in your work in that jail, you can only observe inmates in a small part of the jail. You have no idea what's going on in the rest of the jail. So we'll study the jail, the physical plant, the operational efficiencies, and then we'll come up with solutions. And the solution is, number one is, can that jail be renovated and expanded? Now, it may not be feasible, but we have to look at it, because when you go down to the local coffee shop and you're going to say, well, we're going to go and build a brand new jail. Somebody's going to say, well, did you look at renovating and expanding that jail? The last thing you want to say is, no, we don't even look at that. You do not want to say that. You want to turn over every rock. So we're going to look at renovation and expansion. We're going to look at putting a new jail on that site. It may or may not be big enough. We're going to look at a new jail on a different site. We don't know where that is yet. And then we have to look at, once you remove the jail from the courthouse, there are things we may have to do to the courthouse. For instance, right now you just walk everybody across the parking lot. Well, maybe, now we're going to have to drive people in. Maybe we need a vehicular sally port attached to the jail and a handful of holding cells, because people are going to be there longer than they are now. The judge calls, you call them up there, you take them back. You may not have that ability in the future. So we will look at the cost of whatever you might have to do to the courthouse too. So it's how big the jail is, what the capacity might be, and chances are it's not going to be the capacity it is right now. We're going to look at how much it's going to cost to build. We're going to look at how much it's going to cost to staff and operate, and we'll use the sheriff's budget to start that. But we'll also be working with the Department of Corrections, with Larry and Ron that were here. We're going to have them review the staffing plan as well, because the DOC has to approve your staffing plan before you can build. So we'll have them help out as well. And then, we're going to look at the maintenance of the project, so the hard bricks and mortars, the soft costs, the ongoing costs of operating the building. For every option, you're going to have all that information. Then you can make an informed decision. Well, do we do nothing? Do we build a new facility? Do we try to do something with this? Then you can have an informed decision based upon this information. And again, going back to everybody singing off the same sheet of music. So are there any questions regarding our proposal study?
Questions? Just regarding the feasibility, obviously it's well short of having plans and specs because no decision's been made, but it renders some conclusion at the end or recommendation on which option it is that's presented would be the most cost effective.
There's a couple of ways to do that, and we'll start that out. Some counties want all the information without a conclusion, or without a recommendation. We'll come to a conclusion without a recommendation. Other counties want us to make a recommendation. But there will be layouts, they're far from construction documents, but there will be general layouts of how the building would be laid out and how it would work. Because we have to do a layout in order to do staffing. Because staffing is not a function of how many inmates you have in the jail. It's a function of what's the design of your jail. And so we will come up with a site plan. We'll do a site plan. We'll do a building plan for each of the options that we come up with.
So that footprint remains the same, I guess, whether it's located on the existing site or whether it's moved to a new location?
Maybe and maybe not. I would guess that a new jail on your site that's built to standards maybe have to be more vertical, maybe more than one floor, because I don't know if there's enough room to spread it out. To do a one-story operation, you're going to move out of town and put it on a farm field someplace, and you can do it one story. You can spread out a little bit more. And the other thing too is what other ancillary facilities do you have? I mean, we have to provide parking, staff parking and visitor parking and so forth. Do we need, other support buildings like evidence storage, large evidence storage, or vehicle storage or vehicle repair facilities and things like that maybe on a remote site you can do, but on this site you can't do. So there will be pros and cons. That's the other thing. We'll include advantages and disadvantages of each of the options as well as the costs.
Commissioner Bruff had a question earlier about the cost, and I'm wondering, is there sort of back of the envelope, a per head, inmate facility that drives the cost, or if you can give us sort of a range of potential costs based on other similar counties and work that you've done?
Knowing full well too that you just listed off a huge number of variables, so obviously, as a commissioner and we have newspaper here, and we have public here, we have all these people here, we have to figure out how to pay for this.
Right.
It doesn't sound to me like it sounds like we have to do something, obviously. We either have to repair, renovate, or build new.
Right.
So if there's a way that you could give us a ballpark, I mean, I'm thinking school millage here of $49 million to build an addition on the school. I mean, do you have just a general gross ballpark?
And I would dovetail on that. How would you figure out? I mean, you could throw out an average number of a Spartan, very primitive, or then maybe a couple steps up. But to dovetail on that, how do you find out what the threshold is, what the taxpayers are willing to pay, so you have an idea how much millage money you have to work with to design a Spartan or a Taj Mahal?
Yeah.
Because it's a feasibility study for us too.
Right.
We have to figure out how this can be paid for.
Right.
It doesn't seem to be a question of whether or not we need it or not.
Yeah. Well, I tell my clients a lot of things, and two of them are, number one, this isn't my money we're spending, it's your money, right? So I have to care for it, but you know your constituents best. And so that's one of those conversations we'll have, because there's two ways to build a budget. Number one is you do all these things, and here's what we need, and here's how much it costs. And the other way to build a budget is how much can we get, right? So, and then it's this balancing act. So what we need to do is work on both ends at the same time. But to answer the question, right now we have a facility in Delta County up in the UP that's under construction right now. And your jail's what, 135 capacity? 165 capacity?
With the work release center.
Okay.
132 at the main jail.
Delta County's jail, because the question you asked Larry and Ron was if we built the same number of beds. So this is pretty close. Delta County is 160 beds plus the intake, which gets them almost to 200 beds. And they are reusing part of an existing building and renovating it for the sheriff's office. That project was a $17.9 million project. About 15.5 was for the jail. Construction cost was for the jail. They're spending a little over $1 million on the courthouse because they're adding a vehicular sally port and holding cells and some improved security at the courthouse. They're spending $1 million at the courthouse, and they're building some vehicle maintenance buildings and so forth on the side as well. So in Delta County, the answer is 1,600 or 160 beds plus intake for about $17 million. That's project cost. That includes architects and engineers' fees.
That building on existing land?
They're building on county-owned land, yes. They build on county-owned land. They have what's called a service center, that half of the building was basically vacant. So we have the sheriff's office and the kitchen and laundry in the old building, and then we added the intake and the cell blocks and the new lobby and things on new. But from a per square foot basis, you're going to talk like the difference between a Spartan jail and a nice jail is probably you're going to be in the $275 a square foot to $350 a square foot range. And costs are going up quite a bit. I mean, everybody's building now. But I doubt seriously you need a $49 million millage to get this done. I doubt that. But the other thing too, one of the things, I've worked with a handful of counties that have actually funded their projects through USDA Rural Development. I don't know if you qualify for that or not, but in the case of Delta County, the USDA funded the entire project as a low interest loan, and they expanded the term. USDA will lend you money for as long as 40 years. I had a project, a jail in Florida that borrowed money for 40 years. Some people say, why would I want to borrow money that long? Delta County, I think, did a 30-year term, and something right around 3%. And but they also did pass a millage.
Just so you know, I did meet with USDA. They came to our jail and sat down.
Status, where are we with all that?
The paperwork hasn't been filled out yet. We're kind of presenting this to you before to try to get,
Because the fact is,
the knowledge you need.
USDA has more money the last few years, last 3 to 5 years. They've had more money than they've ever had. They used to cap their loans at $5 million. They don't do that anymore. I've had 2 jails now in the $17 to $18 million range who are both fully funded by USDA.
So is the paperwork, is that a function of us or you?
Us.
Us, meaning?
It was forwarded to Patty, and we haven't pursued it really at this point in time. So I don't know that we really decided we wanted a USDA loan. So filling it out, we'd be seeking the approval. So we met with them just to see if it was something that was, even feasible for us. And at the time, I was estimating around $25 million for the jail, and they said, sure, no problem. Fill out the paperwork. So
It seems premature, right? I mean, we're talking
Right.
feasibility, but it's a possibility.
that's right. That's all.
I mean, it's,
We don't wonder, 1 to 2
I
years.
don't want to say it's premature, I mean, I think it's the first thing. Can we get a loan, or do we have a constituency that's willing to pay for it?
Well, I think you kind of first have to look at the scope of the problem and the range of costs, and then you decide how you're going to finance.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what this.
You need to determine what your need is first.
Yeah, so, Commissioner Barnes.
There's also, you have to consider, it's pretty hard, I think, to put a price on it at this point. And
Oh, yeah.
Kind of more guessing, in my opinion, but, there's a lot of infrastructure that's gonna have to take place. Like you said, parking lots, storm drains, water mains, sewer mains,
Roads.
things like that. And what year you build it, nobody can really predict the price of construction materials. What's it gonna be in 5 years? Is it gonna be high? Is it gonna be low? So I think it's really hard to pinpoint down an exact, even within a couple millions of price until you decide what you're gonna do and what year you're gonna do it.
And it's a very good point. Construction costs in the last 2 to 3 years have just gone, to the moon, relatively speaking. And when we do our cost estimates, we always include 1 to 2 years of inflation in there, because we realize, the minute the study's done, you're not going to be ready to build right away. So you have to plan time for making decisions, plan time to do actually the design before you bid it. So we include a year or 2 worth of inflation.
And then infrastructure, that's
Right.
Other questions from commissioners? Which is back to the envelope, $100,000 at least per.
Yeah. And that was based on a jail that is in construction now, was bid last year.
Yeah, no, I get it, I'm just sort of looking for. Okay, any further questions? Appreciate your time here today. Thank you
Certainly.
very much.
I'm glad to be here.
Sheriff Gold, any closing comments you have?
Just to say that, I think it's my duty to get this ball rolling. And if I didn't, I wouldn't be doing my job. So I hope that you'll find that this feasibility study is something that we desperately need, because we need to know the information for the future.
And we're paying for it, it would be paid for out of general fund then, or it sounds right?
That- Right.
I did have a question, I'm sorry, back to the feasibility and this committee you talked about. Maybe we want to spend just a minute talking about the formation of that committee. I would presume we'd want to have something pulled together with the county coordinator, maybe the sheriff, and a couple of members of our
Some kind of
committee or others.
subcommittee.
What would you recommend?
Yeah, it varies a lot. You definitely want a couple of commissioners on there and people from the sheriff's office. I would try to have either the prosecuting attorney or a judge there, because again, like I said, the justice system starts over in the courthouse, not really at the jail. So having having more of the stakeholders involved and having everybody's voice at the table is important. Because it's one of those things that I've done this long enough that it's important for everybody to be heard. It doesn't mean I have to do everything that everybody says. There are ideas that aren't that good, but we still have to listen to them because it's your jail. If there are influential people in the community, local bank or somebody like that the public respects and listens to, it might be helpful to have somebody, a business person, on the committee as well. But the makeup of the committee is is up to you. But I would include the courts, include the prosecutor, maybe probation. But the sheriff's office for sure. A couple of people. We got to have the jail administrator and the sheriff there. Handful of commissioners.
And the primary purpose of this group is then to help guide the study and review drafts, provide recommendations.
Yeah, that's what we do. We'll have probably three, maybe 4 meetings with you during the course of the study. Because what we're going to do is once we collect the data and do some demographics, the first thing we're going to come back and say, does this make any sense to you? Like, let's say we project the county population, you're about 70,000 now. Say it's going to go to 140 in 20 years, and we say, does this make sense to you? Well, where'd you get that information? Well, we got this from here. No, it doesn't make any sense. So what does make sense? So there's going to be checks and balances throughout, because the last thing we want to do is get to the end in 4 months and find out we had a flawed piece of information in the very first month. We don't want to do that. So we'll come back and report, and there will be some guidance. I mean, the study's going to go where it goes. We don't know where it's going to end up, but again, coming and communicating back to the full board. You have to decide too, how do we do that? Do the committee members do that, or do you have us come back and present to the full board? And how do you want all that communicated?
Okay, that's helpful. I guess rather than maybe making assignments on the fly here, we'll turn to our coordinator, Mike, and maybe working with the sheriff, maybe put a short list together based on what we've heard today. I'd like to be on that group as head of this committee. Maybe we want someone from finance, I don't know, the sheriff, and then any others that...
How big of a group?
5 or 6, 6 or 7?
Yeah, that's good. You get 10 or 12, that's too big of a group. That's 5 or 6 is a good number.
So can I work with you
Yeah.
guys then, and we'll put that list together and let the others. Are there any commissioners at this point that know they would like to participate on this? Commissioner McMaster? Okay, so me, myself, and then we'll work with Mike and the sheriff on the others. Okay.
Thank you.
So that would bring us then to the point of order where we need to accept a motion and advance this to the committee of the whole. We have a proposal for $12,500 as laid out this afternoon. Can I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Okay, is there support for that?
Eric, you'll have to.
Okay, I'll support it. And those in favor signify by saying aye.
We have discussion on it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. We have
Well,
motion and support. Is there
well, I'm
discussion?
okay, so 12.5 to 15,000, do we have it?
We don't know.
Okay, so I don't know, I mean, I'm just saying, today's Tuesday, if we don't discuss this now, Wednesday, I'm a no vote, we don't know where this money's coming from.
Wednesday, you still won't know.
Thursday, I'm a no vote,
And you still won't know.
and I don't know necessarily that we should be doing that.
Wednesday, we better have the information, where it's coming.
And I'm just,
If I have to dig in crap myself, I'll find it.
or is it we can come up with some of it, and
But I mean,
maybe we have to look other places for some, I don't know,
You know, yeah. We've got them.
or other,
Or we're gonna have a more in-depth
be
conversation
very cautious
tomorrow
about
as far
saying
as
that.
finance.
Can actually
goes.
negotiations.
Based on this then, Mike, would you like to withdraw that motion and we'll pick up this conversation
Or
tomorrow?
go ahead and move it forward, so
Move it forward.
we can do it, I'm just,
Okay.
I'm worried about the money.
Okay.
And this is a good indication of why I asked the question. We're looking for $12,500.
Where are we finding 20 million?
So, yeah, again, just by way of process, and this is my shortcoming as chair, I would expect when something's on the agenda being brought before the commission, the presumption is that we do have the funding and that conversations occurred before this point in time.
I agree with that.
And that's my fault for not being better prepared. In the future, going forward, I would prefer that if we're gonna see dollar amounts on the agenda, that these conversations have occurred, and we know we're gonna be able to cover any charges incurred by the county. So, having said that, those in favor to advance it to the committee of the whole signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you all for the information.
Thank you.
Very informative.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 5. Consider authorizing Smart 911 mass notification software. Trent?
Sure. This is Kevin. Kevin is from Rave. Rave is the company that we're looking to change software to. Up till 2 years ago, we continued to use Code Red as our mass notification tool within the county. Up until last year, we were paying over $35,000 a year for 68,000 residents. It also did not provide us with unlimited access, nor did it provide us with unlimited messages. There was actually a cap on those things. Last year, we were able to negotiate, based on our lack of usage, the contract down to $25,000 for Code Red. That funding has been paid for by Homeland Security money since its initial purchase. In an effort to, of course, the Homeland Security funding has significantly decreased over the years. For the last 3 years, including this year, we've only got $32,000, and that includes a 50% split between law enforcement initiatives and emergency management initiatives in the county. In an effort to try to look forward on how we're going to pay for future mass notification, which is a critical component to emergency management when we talk about public alert, public notification for emergencies and disasters. People rely very heavily on getting information on how they're going to react and respond during a crisis. So we looked at, of course, we looked at Code Red. We looked at a second product. That product came in around $18,000 a year. And in talking with our 911 director, she said, well, we're using Smart 911, which is a Rave product. And by the way, Rave has a mass notification module. And so we met, we demoed with them, and that's where we are today. So what we're proposing to do, and by the way, our contract with Code Red is up July 1st, and we have to give them a 90-day notice of termination. So we're going to have to let them know by April 1st that we no longer want to continue with them because we can't financially sustain them anymore. So in looking at Rave, the annual cost for unlimited use for our 68,000 residents, for unlimited administrative access, the ability to establish groups as well as mass notification, to establish on-the-fly conference calls with key personnel during a crisis or disaster to have real-time information and situational awareness, will cost us $7,000 a year as an add-on to Smart 911. Now think of the Rave product somewhat like Microsoft. You can buy a Microsoft Office bundle and you have different components to that. You've got Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. That's exactly what we're looking at here. This is an add-on product to a software that we already own. It doesn't require a new contract, only an additional agreement that basically says we're going to pay for this, and in return, they're going to provide us support and training on the front side. The document you have in front of you shows a couple of things. One of the things that it shows is the Rave Panic button. The Rave Panic button is a product that is becoming more widely used throughout the country, specifically in schools now. Currently, our capability with Smart 911, we're getting the schools to upload all of their emergency response plans, maps, links to cameras within their schools. So when they call 911, that window opens up in the dispatch center and they now have real-time data, real-time access to the school itself. The panic button, as an add-on that will go along with this mass notification tool, is an app that gets downloaded onto the phone. And in very simple terms, if there's an emergency or an active shooter, they push the button on the phone and it sends a notification to the 911 center that there's a crisis. And if they're within the geo-fenced area of the school, that information about the school is going to pop right up. So it actually speeds up the time of response and provides some real data to our first responders. Keep in mind that active shooter responses, the active shooter situation itself is over in 9 to 12 minutes, and the average first responder on scene is 12 to 19 minutes. So the quicker we can get first responders, law enforcement moving with real definitive data and information, the better their situation is going to turn out. So now the question is, what happens with the rave panic button if they're not in the geo fence and they push the button? There'll still be a notification and it'll say that, Jeffrey Bartz has an emergency. It just won't bring up the information about the school because it's not within the geo fence. What I'm proposing is that we pay for that for the first year only, the $2,500 for the 250 licenses to get the schools on board. We've already been pushing this out with the schools. We've had a demo. They're going to need way more than 250 licenses in the future to be able to cover all of their teachers and administrators. And so at $10 a license, that's pretty cheap insurance and communications for them within the school if, God forbid, something bad happens. So we're hoping that in the future they'll pick up that cost, which would then reduce our annual cost down to that $7,000 a year. There is a initial $3,800 cost, and that's to set everything up. To come in, help us to transition data from Code Red over to Rave, also to train our folks and just kind of get the background built out. Kevin, you want to add anything to that?
Sure. So just one other piece, and it's a critical piece on the panic button part for the schools. Not only is when you're pushing that active shooter button, for example, is it telling 911 that this is happening and giving them that key location data and PDFs of floor plans, AEDs, all of those things. It's also simultaneously notifying every single adult, if you will, so teachers, administrators, anyone in the school that has the panic button on their phone, which is, like I said, you can think of it in a school, it's going to be anyone that's not a student will have a panic button. So it'll simultaneously send them also a message that Mr. Hatline in room 201 has activated the active shooter panic button. And then there will be instructions for either lockdown, evacuate, etc. And the same goes along for a fire, just a 911 general emergency. Everyone is going to also get a simultaneous message as 911 is also getting a message, or also getting an actual 911 call with that information with instructions. At that point, like you said, like Trent said, is that average response time is 9 to 12 minutes, and these events like this can happen even in a shorter time than that. So 911 is actually able to push messaging out to everyone at that school during that event. So immediately that call comes through from the panic button, everyone gets the message that's in the initial message that's kind of pre-canned, pre-done in there, which would be whatever their emergency response plan is for that particular school. At that point, if needed, someone from the 911 center here can actually push messages back out to everyone that has a panic button. So if you have areas that maybe instead of locking down they need to evacuate, you can push messages to those areas as well. So obviously when you see things like a shooter on the far east end of a campus, maybe you want the west end to evacuate rather than lock down and hope that that person doesn't start coming that way with a weapon. So again, that's definitely another big piece to the panic button, and obviously it's our job at RAVE to work with the schools here in the coming year to have them fund that if they would like to keep it. We are able to give, like I said, is significantly lower price for RAVE Alert because the state of Michigan does fund Smart 911 here in the state. About 85% of the counties here in Michigan do utilize the Smart 911 system, which is an advanced 911 system that's providing that facility data and citizen data when they're calling 911, more so than just a phone number when they do now. So that is a great way to be able to save some money and also take advantage of some of our other solutions that we do have.
Questions?
Could I just add a couple real quick comments to that? So beyond notifying the other adults in the school, we can set it up to actually notify local law enforcement, fire, anybody else. So they would actually get this message the same time the 911 center is getting that message. And then also the other sales point to this, I mean, obviously if I haven't given you enough sales points, is that every small community within our county can use this with their own administrative rights to contact their own groups. So this isn't just, whereas Code Red really limited our use, and people didn't use it because it limited our use with not unlimited messaging. This is quite the opposite.
Yeah, so for example, the local PDs, the sheriff's department, all the local fire departments in all of the cities would be able to have their own admin level and have notifications just between certain teams. So you could have a SWAT notification, whatever it may be, if you're using it anywhere in the county that's a municipality. So city government, fire departments, police departments, really all of those things we can drill down to have an admin level where they're only notifying just certain parts of the population that they need to. So just citizens in their city rather than countywide. Obviously someone would have kind of an overall countywide for those large scale emergency alerts that you want to put out. But on a lower level you can have internal alerting, which is used a lot around the state, as well as alerting of just certain cities and citizens in those cities.
Commissioner McMaster?
Okay, I have a couple questions. One, dealing with the panic button. What happens, like for instance, with COVID, where you've got a school district, schools are in both counties, law enforcement's in a different county. Is Clinton County in on this too, or can it be worked out? So it's.
So I live in Clinton County actually.
So there's one school, there's one elementary school that's in Clinton, it's in Shiawassee. Everything else is in Clinton. So.
Oh, so it goes over to the Clinton County 911 Center? Is that what the call, is that what you mean?
What happens when you're at
Just like any other cell phone, this pings off the closest tower. So if it's a Shiawassee County tower, it would come to us. And then we would just have to push that to Clinton, just like we do now for emergencies that come.
Or vice versa, and Clinton County does use Smart 911, yes.
But because the way this sets up, you geo-fence the school, so it should always come up to our 911 center if it's geolocated. Because it's more of a process.
Yeah.
But it's in the city of.
And
It's in
panic,
Shiawassee County, but it's in the city of Ovid, so then
and it
it's
wouldn't
across the line.
It wouldn't read it off towers like you're getting your phase 2 location feed for a normal 911 call. It's going to actually read off of a GPS phone level handset, so within 3 feet of you.
Okay. Then my second question, for the mass notification, ballpark, how many phone numbers are we looking at? We're looking at residential phone numbers, we're looking at cell phone numbers, we're looking at both. And what is that number? How many calls per year do you think will be made to that on average?
So a couple things. First of all, I can't tell you how many will be sent every year, only because of the cap that we've had. It's only been used for the most important communications that we needed to get out. Like this year, we've used it twice because the 911 calls were down.
Right.
And we used it because of a big power outage in the south end of the county. But other than that, it hasn't been used a lot because when we use up our minutes, then we start paying.
Okay, so if this is unlimited, you talk about like expanded uses, like this would include tornadoes, this would include bad road, bad weather, snowstorms.
So we're always going to push out the most critical information, always. That's a no-brainer. But this, I think we will be using this more as an example. If we had a disaster and I needed to have, department heads and the chairman on the phone to get a situational awareness, I push this out with the conference call that's already provided by RAVE. They hit that link and boom, they're in a conference call with me and I'm giving you real-time information. So as an example, the departments could use this to push out to special groups. I mean, you could, you could set up a Board of Commissioners group, right? And she could send information directly to you. Or, the county clerk could set up a group for her folks, and we've got a snow day, right? Okay.
I was just gonna say, or so you
Yeah.
can notify us that the courthouse is closed?
Absolutely, yeah, or your car's being towed or whatever the case may be.
Other questions, commissioners? So I have just a couple quick ones myself. So maybe it's related to how this is laid out on the agenda, but this says 32,300.
It's 3 years.
Okay.
3-year contract.
It's a 3-year contract.
Did you say 7,000 though?
Well, it's a 3-year contract. The way that reads, if you look at the $7,000 plus the $2,500 a year times the 3, that's where we get that number from. But what it would actually be, the corrected version is that it's $7,000 a year. We're going to have the additional expenses this year, the $2,500 to set up the RAVE panic button, as well as the other additional setup fees. But year 2 and year 3, it'll only be $7,000. Now, I asked them to give us up to 2 years more in that contract based on whether we choose to stay or not. So we're not really locked in for more than 3 years. And I would suspect, we've done our due diligence, that we're not going to get rid of this product in less than 3 years. So.
Okay. So obviously Code Red's one of your competitors. It's
Sure.
Kevin, you said?
Kevin, yep.
Who are your other competitors?
Everbridge is one of them as well. They tend to be a lot higher in price than we are on that particular part of learning. Those are the two majors. I can tell you I've been working strictly in the state of Michigan for the last year and a half on Smart 911 and Rave Alert. And kind of it's been the same story as that Code Red. Limits usability. It's a lot higher in price usually from what we've seen. A lot of times double in the case of Genesee County where I just was. And then just ease of use and features and access for the community as well are all things that are a little bit tougher with that solution. I think an overall aspect too is the fact that the alerting side of things and Smart 911, which you guys have already, is a dual sign up. So anyone that is signing up for Alert is also signing up for Smart 911, vice versa. Along with the fact that the state is, this is a statewide effort for Smart 911. So we do have a larger awareness of Smart 911 in the state. So, we're kind of helping doing that marketing for you guys to get the word out, to get people to opt in to getting these messages from the county. And the last part too is that we offer that Code Red and some of the others don't offer is that you do have the ability to create some opt-in levels. So if you're a citizen, you're able to look at, I just want the emergency messaging, which it sounds like that's mostly all you've been sending out. But if you want to start sending out things that are non-emergency, events in the county, things that are, that you just want to get out to the community, people can actually click boxes to take the emergency. It also like to hear about the events, that sort of thing. So that way you can use it for more than just a few times a year. You can use it throughout the year. We see a lot of counties use it for their county fair for a specific amount of time. and get out messages for traffic, parking, all those types of things. So again, it's got a lot more granularity to it than any other product out there. And again, with the reason that we're able to offer such a lower price than everyone here in the state is because of the fact that we do work statewide for Smart 911.
Well, I have full faith in our staff. Trent, I'm just curious from a procurement standpoint. Are we missing anything here, and how did you arrive at?
Everbridge was the third product, so we had quotes from Everbridge,
You did, okay.
Code Red, and Rave.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so you said, you didn't know, obviously, we don't know how many emergencies or how many snow days or river floodings, or if we wanted to talk about Halloween hours or trick or treating or the fair or fireworks, whatever. How many numbers though? How many, what's your contact list? Ballpark, to the nearest 10,000
So
or 5,000?
it'll cover our 68,000 residents, as well as folks that are transient that perhaps work in Shiawassee County, but live in Genesee County or another county, could sign up to get information from Shiawassee County as well.
Okay,
So
so and I guess the point I want to know is, or what I'm trying to get at,
are
the
we going to
equation.
cap it?
What's that?
Is it going to be capped? Is that what
No,
you're
I
asking?
mean, I want to know how much we're paying ballpark every time we do it countywide. How much is it all going to be? Is it?
That's the number right there. There is no other, nothing outside of that.
Right, but if we use it 3 times or 20 times, there's a cost. So what's the cost?
The same number. You can use it once or 1,000 times.
It's $7,000 flat, unlimited.
Right, but like, so let's say we use it 5 times. How much are we paying? I know it's capped and everything, but what does that come out per call? 3 cents, 4 cents, 2 cents, 1 cent?
If you only use it 3 times, it's 7,000 divided by 3. But if you use it 100,000
No, but-
times, then
There's not a per minute
There's no
message cost.
you can use it 1,000,000
So
times.
it's difficult to, unlike Code Red, where they gave us a cost and said, once you reach this threshold, then you're gonna pay this amount of
Right.
money for every message sent. This isn't like that, so.
I think what the commissioner's asking is whether, how many phones will this go out to? Do people have to sign up? Do we have 10,000 people signed up? Do we have 5,000 people signed up?
Sure.
They have to go and actually sign up for this.
Right, so
right?
anyone,
Yeah, about this. On average, your customers across the state, on average, how much does it cost per phone call?
it's all over the board. Again,
Well,
it depends on your
We talking
population.
5 cents, we talking $1, like, what, I mean, how much?
You're talking pennies, less than
Well,
pennies.
that's what I'm asking, like,
Yeah.
2 cents, 3 cents, 4 cents?
Yeah, I mean, depending on how much you use it, you're talking less than pennies per phone call. Tenths and hundreds of a cent per phone call.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen, for the information. We have an agenda item here to consider authorizing Smart 911 mass notification software. Information presented before us. Need a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll support that motion. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Agenda item number 6, consider approving the purchase, accept a motion to consider approving the purchase of conference tables and chairs for the central dispatch training room from DBI at a 66% discount rate through My Deals for a total of $28,004.97 to be taken out of line item 216-325-970.000.
Make that motion.
I'll support that motion. Do we have somebody here to share up the goal?
This furniture is for our new training facility that's located in the new 911 building. Currently, there is no furniture in there except for the tables that we've brought up from the range and set up for the dispatchers to set up computers to train. So we have the room there for training, fire, police, this and that. So we did look at a couple competitive bids, and this company here was by far the best one, and it's all the tables and chairs for the facility. It was budgeted through 911 out of their budget already.
their budget, their annual budget, or as part of the construction of that facility?
Annual budget.
Annual budget, so they have the funding to cover that. Nice stuff, Hayworth's nice stuff.
Yeah, it is. Yep. We went with some nice stuff that would last.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion, questions or comments by commissioners?
Do you have a picture of the tables? and
I don't. Lieutenant Batinkoff actually handled that, but she had material for the undershirt.
There's drawings and stuff, renderings and.
In the packet there,
Yeah. Okay.
Seems like a lot of money.
That's
Well, I'm just saying,
It is
I
a
mean,
lot of money.
we go to Walmart and get, or Sam's Club and get chairs and tables for, I'm not saying that's what we need to do, but.
Those last 2 years.
They could probably look on Craigslist too.
I'm not gonna go that route, but.
That was my initial thought, Commissioner, and I did look at this, and after looking at it, knowing what office furniture, good office furniture costs, well, I always think they mark it up to mark it down, and it's
Yes.
nice.
We should see this.
You know,
It's fun, I mean, if it's gonna last, I
it's
mean,
nice stuff. so,
A lot of times you're sitting in the classroom for 8 hours, so you don't want to have
That's true.
a chair. No. So you want to keep
Those in
people's
favor
attention.
signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. It will proceed to the committee of the whole. Any other agenda items from committee members or commissioners?
We skipped 7.
Got an ordinance issue. ORV ordinance.
That wasn't, I missed that agenda. I brought my own, so this was updated.
You don't have the revised one.
Okay.
It's been revised.
Apologies for that. Agenda item number 7, discussion of new ORV ordinance. I think we talked about this last month. Commissioner Bartz maybe brought that up, or?
We'll talk about it a little. Henry, do you want to speak at all, or?
Well, I'd love to be
So,
open.
I'm sorry, so this is Henry Wolf, and he works for Representative Frederick, and he is here to talk a little bit, to start out. I know he's been sitting here a while, so I want to let him maybe go first, and if he's got to leave or something.
Right, and I appreciate the opportunity, Jeff, our commissioner, and the board to speak on this. I really didn't intend to speak too long about it, just to say that this authority is delegated back to the board. There's a series of instructions that I've sent along to Chairman Bartz regarding how to implement that. It's something that Rep. Frederick is supportive of, and any immediate concerns that might come to mind could maybe go back to the farmers in our community, of course. And I'll say one thing, that the person that, one of my former bosses, represented an area up north where they've actually opened up all the forest roads in the lower peninsula now. So we're dealing with that a lot more, and the sponsor of that bill was the chairman of Farm Bureau. He lived up north, the farmer himself, and he was the main sponsor of that bill. So there may be concerns in that respect, but nothing that hasn't been answered in the past. So I just want to open myself up to any, questions from a state standpoint, or, I just want to be here to, help facilitate any communication with the state that may need to occur.
Great, if we could, just for everyone's understanding, just quickly articulate the scope of the new ordinance and what that would allow.
That would be molded by the county. So you can open up a certain number of your roads. I do believe it has to be less, 30% perhaps. You can close up to 30% of your roads, and then other than that, they can be open, and it's up to the.
Okay,
If you
Commissioner
want,
Bartz.
well, Henry's here, maybe I can give a little bit of background.
Please.
And then we can go into questions after that, because I have been fairly involved in this. So, we decided to take this up. I contacted Representative Frederick's office, got ahold of Henry. The state of Michigan, Ben Frederick's in favor of this. The sheriff's in favor of this. The road commission's pretty good with it. So we had a preliminary meeting, went over things. I wanted to bring this to discussion for the Board of Commissioners, because this is the final decision comes right here at this board. We had a preliminary meeting, went over things. We're gonna meet again in a few weeks, the sheriff, the road commission, and we're gonna come up with the rules and regulations that we feel are pertinent to doing this. And that's what we will be bringing back into a packet for you all to look at before we vote on it. But the sheriff, I know he's gonna speak for a few minutes too, but we've contacted the road commissions, we've contacted the other sheriff's department and stuff, and in some instances, there's less problems now that it's legal than before when it was illegal, because more people were calling and complaining, the others side by sides going down the road and they're not supposed to be, and now they're just going down the road and people are never minding.
So what's the, right now, what's the scope looking like? Like dirt roads, is that what
We're thinking right now at this point that it would be no state highways of any sort, and probably mainly secondary roads. The Class A roads and the primary roads, which would be maybe like State Road, 2 or 3 roads going north and south, and 2 or 3 roads going east and west, that the road commission has the right, or I shouldn't say they have the right, but I guess they do have the right to shut off about 33% of the roads if they so choose. They can't vote on the ordinance one way or the other, but they do have the, I guess they do have the ability to shut some of the roads off. And they're thinking, obviously the state highways has nothing to do with that. They're off limits no matter where you go in the state of Michigan. But some of the primary roads, I think the road commission is gonna come back and ask us not to include them roads. What I've found, if there are tickets written, the money after expenses or whatever, part of the money goes to the sheriff's patrol or the sheriff's department for enforcement, and the other half goes to the road commission for maintenance of the roads. Take care of that part of it, correct, Sheriff?
That's right. So this bill, when it came about, it took the decision away from the state and put it back into the county board of commissioners' hands on whether to allow the ORVs on the roadway. And if you decide to do so, obviously you want to enact a county ordinance in order to regulate that. And so, yeah, we sat down, Commissioner Bartz and I and the road commission, and we just started the preliminary talks on this ordinance and what we would like to regulate. Some of the things that we talked about, were the dirt roads, and I think we all agreed that dirt roads in this county weren't very highly traveled. So we thought that yes, dirt roads would be included in this. We have the ability to restrict any other roads in the county, and then, like he was explaining, in addition to that, the road commission can limit that if they think that those roads should be excluded. We can set speed limits. We can, make other requirements, to the ordinance. At this point in time, it's just a kind of a preliminary thing that we're talking about and discussing. And I sent out a list to all the county sheriffs in the state, all 83 of them, because I wanted to see what challenges they are faced in enforcing this ordinance. And I also asked for them to send me a copy of their ordinances. And I don't want to say I was surprised, but they immediately started responding back to me, and I was keeping track each county, and almost no negative reviews at all. They said that it poses no problems in their counties, and the ones that it does, very, very minor, and they were occurring anyway. Some sheriff reported that their complaints on ORVs on the roads had actually gone down. So everything was positive. There was a couple of sheriffs, for whatever reasons, in highly populated areas, who decided to opt out of it. But if the Board of Commissioners decides to opt out, there are townships that can opt in, and that happened in, say, it was like Marquette County, I believe it was. They opted out, but then some of the townships, 6 or 7 of them, came in and said, no, we want this. So they decided to enact their own ordinance and allow it.
The towns and villages have their own, they can opt in or out also.
So what is the definition then of ORV?
Well, there is one, and I don't have it here with me, but there is a definition, and we've been talking to the county coordinator about that, what we want to allow. We want to make sure that we address everything in there that we want to allow. Now, Tuscola County drafted an ORV ordinance, but it wasn't very specific to say that it included golf carts. It had a definition of a ORV, and many people were riding the golf carts on the road, and the DNR began issuing citations when, in fact, my understanding, it was the intent of the board to allow that to happen. The DNR then backed off on that, and everything seems to be working fine. So that's one thing we know. We have to be very explicit in there when we decide what we want to allow, what we don't want to allow.
You know,
But another would be, would it include snowmobiles?
right,
So-
or even, I guess this is one of my concerns, and ORVs, are we talking, obviously, there's like the one that you own, there's one that Jeff owns, which is similar to like a modern day Gator. The Gator I have has no seatbelts, yours, new Gators have seatbelts. Mine doesn't have a roll bar, new Gators do have roll bars. So I guess I would hope that when we, if it gets to us or in your formulation, when we're trying to define ORVs, I'm thinking about the safety of the drivers or the kids, the passengers that are riding along,
Absolutely.
if they were struck by a vehicle. Now,
All of those things can be
That's-
included in the
that's-
ordinance.
Am I
have
off on
examples
that, or is it?
No, and we're talking like quads, because obviously quads don't have seatbelts and that we would require a helmet.
Okay, well, that's another thing, is
You know what I
the
mean?
helmets.
If they don't have restraints, then we would probably talk about, you would have to wear, some sort of headgear.
Any kind of minimum, maximum speed on engine size or any of this stuff, or not?
It's whatever the county enacts, and.
But like
Okay,
other
35
counties-
miles an hour, we're thinking would be tops.
I'm sorry, what's that?
35 miles an hour, we're thinking.
For speed or capability of the ORV?
Well, they all go way faster than that. That would be speed. If you get caught speeding, then you're gonna obtain a ticket. I want to say that the sheriff up in Antrim County, where I ride my snowmobiles and my ATV most of the time, they post that stuff on their website and they make it available when you get your ORV stickers and stuff. And ignorance is no excuse for the law. If you get pulled over and you're going 60 miles an hour and tell them, the speed limit's 35, it's just like on a county road, then the sheriff's department would be hopefully required to write a ticket.
Speed limits vary from ordinance to
Okay,
ordinance.
and then on the, obviously, we're talking dirt roads. But what if you have, like, are you able to cross a paved road to get to another dirt road? Is that gonna be acceptable?
Yeah.
So you're not like locked into like a quarter mile or a half mile?
Well, there's gonna be many, many paved roads that you can go down, so.
Okay.
It's just the primary roads, the state highways and the primary roads that are thinking of excluding.
We've been talking to the county road commission, we're gonna ask for traffic studies and how much traffic flows on some of these roads and determining whether, we think they should be allowed in there or not. So I think that's, none of us wanna be part of a bad decision, so we are, going to put a lot of effort and time into researching what we think may be best in the ordinance.
Any other questions, discussion?
So I guess my question to the rest of the commissioners is, with what you've heard, do you want us to proceed with this? I mean, I don't want to do a whole bunch of work.
I would say yes, as long as we take into consideration safety stuff like seatbelts, helmets, that kind of stuff.
Commissioner.
I would suggest, if we are willing to pursue looking into it, that we form some sort of like ad hoc committee that includes maybe the sheriff's department, maybe a couple of township supervisors, road commission, representatives at large or whatever, to just talk about what are we looking for. 'Cause it sounds to me like what I've heard already, there's a lot of questions and a lot of things that'll have to be decided. Speed limits, definition of an ORV, how does insurance work if there's an accident? ORVs have their own insurance, right? What if they're all uninsured?
You're gonna have to have insurance.
Age.
Well, what if they're not?
Age is
Some
well,
teenager gets on a
well, then-
four-wheeler and wrecks it.
then their parents are losing their house in the lawsuit. I mean, it's no different. if you
Just
don't
a lot
have-
of questions and maybe.
And we do have a committee right now that stands of the sheriff, the road commission acting director, one of their commissioners, myself, and Mike. And if we wanted, if it's so the will of the board to add a couple more people to it, we have.
I would think maybe
plans.
some township officials, just because these are, I don't want to say they're their roads, but they're their roads.
I can tell you that there's people from Vernon Township, one of my townships, who love to probably sit down and say, I bet, I guarantee you. Get them involved and let the whole community come up with a good idea.
And also in this, right, and we have to hold some public hearings also.
Right, you may be able to kill two birds with one stone on that. I mean, you can say begin the process, so the process starts at mailing all your townships and telling them what you're thinking about. You could dip your feet in and just start the process, knowing that there are folks that are open to it but have questions, and that's sort of my take right now. Is that it sounds like there are concerns and stuff, but not worth stopping now, and I would agree with that. But you could, and I would take another look over this, but what I've sent along to you and could send along to whoever else would like, the analysis of this says that you have to send out these notices to the township. So you could just begin with, say, a form letter or something and send it out and see, what are your concerns? Please contact us.
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
however.
standard practice, right? Any new ordinance would be sent to the township for their review and comment and recommendation coming back from the
Right.
township boards, so.
One last thing, and maybe you guys have discussed this, maybe not, maybe it's why somebody from Farm Bureau needs to be thrown on. Where do we draw the line, farm use versus recreational ORV use? And then if you have been doing this for farm, now are you gonna be required to follow these other rules? Because right now, you could slap an SMV sign on it and go down the road, farm use. So what happens? And I'm just throwing that out there.
I don't
I
think it's gonna
agree.
be much different than what's allowed with that slow moving vehicle sign, going field to field to check crops,
Right, but like,
I have a gentleman from last fall that owns a couple acres and he has permission to hunt on his neighbor's land, and he was up in the morning just going down the side of the road on a quad to go to his hunting spot, and this gentleman's elderly, certainly cannot walk that far, and he was pulled over by the DNR and got a $200 ticket. So,
I mean, right now, you could throw an SMV sign on it, go down the road, and probably get away with a lot of stuff because it's under farm use. Are they still gonna be exempt if they are doing farm use, or are they gonna have to?
Well, I think it's sort of like a lot of these, God and
Well,
devil.
that's what I said.
And I
Have
think-
somebody from Farm Bureau, ask somebody from County Farm Bureau, or Extension, or whatever, to be on the annual committee.
I think I've heard the conversation.
that's why I brought this as a discussion only today, because I know trying to maybe, maybe I'm hopeful, because I like, this is something that I like, but, 90 days out or something, at least before we can.
I think there's support, at least to move forward and continue those conversations. Like Commissioner McMaster, I'm very interested in the safety aspect of this, restraints, helmets, gear, standards for gear, whatever the case is.
And I guess at this point, if you gentlemen would like to talk to your township supervisors, and if we get some, we'll pick one or two of them to be on the committee. I don't like huge committees, but there's 5 of us now. I certainly think at least one township supervisor should be on the committee, though.
Commissioner Marks, do you have a name in mind you might like to recommend?
Well, I'd like to ask
Follow
him
up?
first,
Yeah.
but I think Supervisor Bert Clerk from Bert Township.
We were talking about meeting again in about 2 weeks. Our committee. to
Would
go-
you mind following up?
I will do that, yes.
Letting Mike know that? Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner Bartz. Anything else on this?
Thank you all. I
Thank you, Henry,
appreciate it.
for
Thanks,
taking the
Henry.
time to come.
Thank you.
You have the representative's
Thanks.
office. Thank you for this time as well.
And any way I can be of help, I'm here. You guys, I think every single one of you knows where to find me. So. See you later.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bartz, for your work on this. Now I think that brings us to any other agenda items.
I just want to say real briefly that the members of the Shiawassee County Sheriff's Office, as well as local police departments, our emergency manager here have been working very closely, obviously following the news of the shooting down in Florida. Our concerns are that we could have something like that here, and we want to be trained and prepared if it should happen. New policy has been enacted, training has occurred, and it's continuing to a desktop exercise and eventually a full-scale exercise. We've met with the superintendents of the schools. All the schools attended a meeting, and all the chiefs of police and myself attended one. And we let them know that they have options out there. And briefly, I'm just going to discuss what I told them. Personally, I'd like to see a police officer in every school, and I don't know if that's feasible or not, but that would be our first choice if they could afford to have an armed police officer in the school to protect our children. But short of that, I'm not cramming anything down their throats, but I will be the first one to say, as their sheriff, there are other options if you can't. And one of them was that I have phone calls coming in from retired state representatives, retired police officers, and veterans who are willing to guard our children. And I, for one, would be willing to help in vetting if they wanted those people in the schools protecting our children, or at least assisting a police liaison officer. Due to the size of the school, they're not able to cover the whole thing and just work in conjunction with them. So that's one thing that we're willing to do. Another thing was help in the training of those individuals that volunteer. There's been talk on recently whether teachers should be armed. I said, go back, speak to your school boards, and if that's something that ends up happening, you know, I have NRA certified CPL instructors on the sheriff's office that we would be able to assist them. So I didn't want them to think that I wasn't at least willing to start that conversation, and it certainly wasn't, you know, silly to me. So we are here as a resource to them and willing to assist in any way we can to protect our kids. And so I wanted you to know that all that's going on a daily basis.
Thank you, Sheriff. Very much appreciated. Please keep us.
Our emergency manager, Trent Atkins, has been instrumental in getting everybody together. And it's funny because it wasn't that long ago I stood before you and I told you it took somebody with a unique personality in order to do that. And we've come a long way thanks to him. He's been training the fire side of things, and triage and stop bleeding, and we're training on the police side, so everything is coming together nicely. I just want to mention that, what a nice job he's been doing.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Okay, any other agenda items?
Thank you, Trent, as well.
This will be our final call to the public. Members of the public wish to speak. It doesn't appear to be the case. Before we adjourn, I know we're moving into a meeting after this. This one went long. Is it the desire to take 5 minutes or just move right in? Or Sheriff? We're adjourned, 5-minute recess.
Hey, don't forget, Casey, I was sitting here, his item was agenda number 8.
Well, he's all in the
Yeah, but I was saying, I didn't know if you, everybody knows who he is, what he said. Right, Casey? Don't forget you're here. I gotta go.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I don't Yeah, I just don't. But it's so.
Yeah, you all sorry. All right. So good luck.
Is that the report? Cell phones.
Just out of curiosity.
Email.
If you want to make a copy,
If you do one, I report that much.
You can point it out.
Yeah, and I'm glad we said this about the week. Yesterday. The way it's all in one day.
Let me see what you're missing.
See if we
I'm missing.
didn't think there was a lot of stuff that was relevant to you, but maybe you want to stick around.
I like to stay informed, Tim.
Oh, yeah. It's cheap. It's cheap. Cheap. They're so cheap. But even at the fair, let's say something isn't fair. You have fair employees for sheriff's deputies.
What's that?
Sheriff's sheriff fair, we got something pretty fair. You know, specifically at the fair with them. Yeah. No, that's good. That's cheap. I mean, that's cheap. Feeding hours. Firework hours.
I don't know at this pace, maybe not.
Accidents, roads closed, you can do bad roads. I know.
You know what they find that we can't exclude you.
That's what Brian says. Well, well, that's what I was gonna ask that. Schools just tell them.
Well, I wouldn't go from there because they use it for their accounts as well. Will not follow the proper fixed procedure, following the right lane.
You let them in on the strip.
I didn't get it. We had engineers study this and say, okay, but you took all the way and just because you think they're gonna go this way, no, they're like cattle, they're gonna sit.
Yeah, they just can't get quite what's really interesting about.
All right, I gotta, we gotta read on this.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Hey, you're doing a stellar job.
We're trying to go away.
It's going really good.
All right.
He is. Yeah, trying something. I guess we'll see. Sound. Please bring us that by Wednesday. Sure.
I'll just write a number down.
You won't know either way.
That's right. The agenda was actually printed on.
All right, that's
That's always a good one.
That's the report from.
yes.
Oh, you
You
got
know what scares me the most?
Thanks, sir.
Good to see you. The role in the.
Sorry, you guys.
That's all right.
The politics. That's so different.
Moses told you up.
It doesn't, but I was like,
Maybe
how did I
hip
get
cancer.
some money?
What could say?
Larry sure
Or-
took 20 minutes, huh?
I was gonna say.
How's he manage to do that? He misses.
I don't know.
He misses the MTA that goes to the hour and a half speaker.
Well, I thought it was Monday night, so I'm like, okay, what time do I need to be down Monday? And he's like, no, it's Tuesday. I'm like, okay. He's like, well, yeah, I'll just go with it. We'll just have what you come with. That's how this started. I'm like, okay, no problem. And I get an email this morning. I'm gonna see you tonight in Grand Rapids.
Mike, or,
We'll be there.
I think it's gonna be Wednesday, maybe?
They were advertising it on Facebook to be tonight.
Present those proposals for all the time without comment, and if they make any questions.
That's the plan.
Opposed to.
Ask me questions.
Presentation.
The plan is to not question Casey to death.
Well, that wasn't part of the agenda that I saw. My name wasn't anywhere else.
You on?
I'm sitting on the floor.
Kind of look like it.
Where's my booster?
Oh,
There we go. All right.
Yeah, now you're like a grown-up.
Color looks good. Looks good.
We're waiting on Dan. Bert's had eye surgery or eye something appointment.
Oh, jeez. This is it.
Did Dan leave? He's done?
Is he on this committee?
Oh, he's on the committee now with it. All right, we'll call this committee meeting of Health and Human Services to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this time we'll move to call to the public. We have no public. We'll move to agenda item 4, consider appointing Paul Weiss, or Weiss, the Shiawassee Health and Wellness Committee for a 3-year term from 4/1/2018 to 3/31/2021, until successor is appointed, authorize board chair to execute all necessary documents. So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Consider appointing Kay Height as primary to the Shiawassee Health and Wellness Committee to replace Jerry Walden for a 3-year term from 4/1/2018 to 3/31/2021, or until successor is appointed, and authorize the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Agenda item 6, entertain a motion to consider appointing Jan Harper as a secondary to the Shiawassee Health and Wellness Committee to replace Jerry Walden for a 3-year term from 4/1/2018 to 3/31/2021, or until a successor is appointed and authorized the board chair to execute all necessary documents.
So moved. Support?
Motion and support, discussion?
Quick question.
Yes. I
There
was
are two
actually gonna
people,
ask you a question.
two people replacing Jerry Walden?
That's what I wanted to know. Are they putting alternates on this board now, or what?
I'm not, I'm only familiar with Kay.
You know, Commissioner, I wasn't familiar with the language you were using either. I see though that to replace the one who recently passed away,
Right.
they are
Well, that's-
specifically looking for what they call a primary consumer, is that what it was?
Correct.
So I wonder if this language was some kind of reference to that, but we didn't have a source at that time. I was gonna ask you when you came in tonight, but apparently that didn't avail.
I hadn't been a part of that discussion. I was on the committee, the nominating committee, and we nominated Kay. But as I'm reading this, I'm like, why does he have to be replaced twice? And obviously, this isn't, I mean, there's nowhere on here where Robin is mentioned.
No.
Is it a typo? Is it maybe just a typo?
Could
Should
They-
we move it to Wednesday and then kill it?
I was under the impression that you had submitted it, Commissioner. Where did we actually get it from?
I did not submit this.
Was there anything in the packets? Because this was either
Probably
sent to
would keep-
Judy or I to be on the,
Who's the administrative? She usually sends all
Jamie
that.
Burke.
Jamie Burke, that's one.
That
She
was,
usually sends everything.
Let me
over.
see if I got her in my, I can text her.
I think Judy had written that on her originally. That was already on.
I was questioning that myself, and I wanted to wait till I came to committee to discuss it, because I wasn't sure if this is supposed to be an alternate, like if Kay isn't there, Jan's gonna fill in.
Yeah, I thought Commissioner Bruckle had the answer.
I did too.
Can we just move
I thought
on
they
to
covered
tomorrow?
him.
This
I'm
is,
sorry.
it's a new one,
Yeah.
not on me. Let me ask, I'm gonna text Jamie, see if she'll get back to me.
Well, they had actually put, I think the actual wording was they'd actually put primary person or something. And then when we saw the one for the deceased member, and it said that person has to be a primary consumer of the service.
Correct.
You know, there may well have been some reference to that, but then I have no idea why they would have used the word secondary. And talked about somebody else for the same person.
Is there 3
I think this
openings?
I think this is her, what?
Is there 3 openings on the board?
See, I thought there was only 2, Robin being the second. So,
What the?
yeah, it's really, this is kind of
So should we
confusing.
move it to tomorrow and then try to
That
get?
would be good.
Okay.
And this Jan Harper may very well be a consumer.
Well, and it might be the K height that is. So
No,
she-
Kay is the nurse from Duran. She's an RN at the Duran Public Schools, and she's new on the board.
I guess we're gonna have to find out their nomenclature.
We need to know that
for the words, but.
Sorry.
No,
That's all
I
right.
just, when I saw all these nominations, where did all these people come from?
All right, for now, all those in favor, move this till tomorrow. Signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries on tomorrow. Number 7, I'll entertain a motion to consider authorizing the health department to contract with Emergency Response Solution International in the amount of $25 per hour for up to 320 hours from 3/1/2018 to 9/30/2018. Authorize Larry Johnson, health director, to sign all necessary documents. So moved.
Support that.
And the support. Our health director is out of town. Did you want to say anything on this? I know Larry will be here to fill us in tomorrow. It's obviously budgeted. It's obviously in the health department's budget to pay. We talked about it at health board.
I'd just like to know, what it's for,
Tomorrow we'll
what
have
the
a,
function is.
unless you want to cover it, we're good tomorrow.
No, they're good.
Yeah. Larry will cover it tomorrow, so. All those in favor of moving this to tomorrow's committee of the whole, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed, motion moves forward. Agenda item 8, entertain a motion to consider authorizing the health department to hire a director of environmental health to fill a vacancy at salary grade 11, $52,686 to $68,473, with a starting range of $52,686 to $58,614.
So moved.
Second. Motion and support. Any discussion on this? We'll move this forward. I think everybody's met Mr. Elliott.
Very good,
our
yes, I
guy
think
moving
he is
up.
a worthy candidate. for
Yes,
this
he is.
position.
So
Are we voting on him or just to open to hire the
it
position?
is him. This
Health
position is
department
going,
thinks-
he is currently the manager up there and he is moving to this
Just
role.
let the health department know.
Yeah.
Pick him.
They already, the health board already unanimously supported him.
Good deal.
Larry's behind him 100%. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion moves forward. I'll entertain a motion to consider authorizing the health department to hire a health educator at salary grade 7, $37,668 to $48,963, with a starting rate of $37,668 to $43,326.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And item 10, consider authorizing the health department to hire a WIC clerk to fill a vacancy at pay grade 2 on the SEIU health technical clerical salary range, $28,392, $34,944, with a starting range of $28,392.
So moved. Second.
Motion second, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion moves on to Wednesday. 11, consider authorizing the health department to hire a public health nurse 2, fill a vacancy at grade 9 on the SEIU nurse salary range of $46,009 to $56,596, with a starting range of $46,009 to $53,060.
So moved. Second.
Motion second, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion moves on to Wednesday. Agenda item 12, entertain a motion to consider authorizing the health department to hire a director of finance and administrative services to fill vacancy at grade 10, $47,881 to $62,254, with a starting range of the exact same. So
moved.
Support. This is, we currently do have someone in this role in the health department, but he was an interim role, and I think right now we're just looking at him to be finishing out training somebody, so Larry's looking at somebody a little more permanent now in the role. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Motion moves forward. 13, any other agenda items at this time? I do want to be kind of brief on something, you know, because Commissioner McMaster's brought up, do we have $12,000? Yes, but we have some processes that really need to be fixed. We have some things that are really going bad, fast. And I think with the accounting firm I've been working with, I think the finance committee themselves, me, myself, I know Brandon's been in it, you, Commissioner McMaster's been in it a little bit, the coordinator, are really looking at the accounting firm coming in and really doing a full-scale process review of anyone that does cash receipting, any type of intake of money. We need to cut the process down. You know, right now it seems as though there are 15 steps, and there should probably only be 3, and they should be uniform, whether it's in the courts, whether it's in front of the court, whether it's here at our office. And you know, this is something that the accounting firm is going to do for us. They're going to look at our technology, they're going to look at our software, they're going to look at where we stand as far as where should we be probably, you know, maybe get us in line for an upgrade on technologies, which we need, we desperately need. That's been a problem for a while. That's no news to anyone. But the problem right now is with do we know the money's there? The money's there, but the process is so scattered and things are so...
It's not in real time, it's like...
Yes, we need it to be...
We know the money's there, but we gotta wait 3-4 months to make sure that the money's really there.
And it needs to be cleaned up, and things need to be fixed, and I think this full-scale review, this process review, this evaluation of everyone involved is gonna entail evaluations on employees as well. So we've gotta have accountability, and we've gotta start somewhere, and I think this is gonna be a big step for us.
I think it's a healthy thing. I think it's our responsibility now. I mean, when Jeremy and I have talked about this, and Brandon, one of our primary goals, is the money side. is the finance. And you know, we talk about zoning and ordinances and all this other stuff. But our primary goal is, we are the fiduciary
Body.
oversight, or whatever you want to call it. And it's our job to make sure that,
Well, and we've got to be able to ask questions and have answers, and we've got to have things that are done, and no one's necessarily to blame, but we've got to get in there and we've got to figure out why we're missing in some areas and see where it is we need to be stronger at. And I think, you know, this is just something, I was going to cover it a little more tomorrow, and I still will. I know Chairman Bartz already knows about everything too, but we'll go into it again tomorrow with a discussion. But I mean, we're in a position right now with an employee leaving from our front office. I mean, an employee leaves from our front office, you know, we go from being, you know, 3 months behind to now we're 5 months behind. You know, and we can't afford to lose, to not have that employee and have to train somebody in that role. So it's, I mean, we're not in a position right now to do that. I mean, we're starting to exhaust our options with the accounting firm. The accounting firm can only do so much. I mean, they're going to help us. They're helping us with audit prep for this year, or for 2017, excuse me. But I mean, they're a company that has a lot of clients as well, and they've only contracted with us for so many, you know, such an amount of services. When we're sitting here saying, my God, we're in panic mode right now with them, trying to get them to work with us. So they are doing what they can. They will be out here soon. They're working closely with the coordinator. But I think this is just something we've seen and we've looked at, and now it's just starting to unravel. And I mean, it's one of those processes that you take 2 steps forward and then, you know, 3 steps backwards. So I find that we're not getting anywhere right now. And we need to start. Stuff's there, money's accounted for, but we're not doing things in timely manners. You know, I mean, we've got friend of the court funding we're in jeopardy of. We've got circuit court funding, grant funding we're in jeopardy of losing. You know, these are big deals, serious. I mean, if we lose our drug court grant, can you imagine our judge being in front of us? Not going to be something we want to deal with. Friend of the court, if we lose $200,000, they get incentives and state grants or fundings for their programs. Do we lay everyone off in their office, or the general fund has to make up that money that we're not getting, the 66% that we're not getting to fund their office? So, I don't know, this was a discussion we needed to have at some point. We'll probably have more of it tomorrow, but I just wanted everybody to be aware now. So that's all I have for their agenda items. Not really related to Health and Human Services, but
something that needed to be brought to our attention. Thank you.
looked like you were gonna say something.
Nope, just listening.
All right, call the public. Anyone from the public? None. All right, we're adjourned.
Got done by 7.